Hey, what's up everyone? This is a edited version of a video I previously posted about a month ago on the alarm indications for the Q-Power that uses the upgraded 35 amp controllers with this all black display that lights up green like this. So what happened is I had recorded that original video quite a while ago and I had it sitting on my computer. I came across it about a month ago and wasn't sure why I hadn't uploaded it yet, so I just went ahead and uploaded it. And turns out the reason why is there was an edit I needed to do into it that I forgot about. And I want to give a shout out to Zach W., who in the comments of that original uploaded video pointed that out to me. I went back and watched it and realized that that's the reason why I hadn't uploaded it yet, is because I wanted to make that edit to the video. So again, thanks Zach W. For pointing that out to me. Change part is right here, and it's regarding the exclamation mark alarm you may get in your upper left hand corner of the display here. And basically all that is the controllers think you are applying the brakes, whether you are or not. If you're getting that exclamation mark, the controller thinks you have the brakes on. And let's just demonstrate that here. Here's my brake handle. I'm going to pull it, and you can see I get the exclamation mark up in the front. I release the brake handle, it goes off. Other one, same thing. Pull my brake handle, exclamation mark comes on, release it, exclamation mark goes off. So that exclamation mark is basically just an indication to the controller that you're pulling the brakes. If you're getting that exclamation mark and you're not pulling your brakes, the controller still thinks your brakes are on, your scooter will not move, the motors will not move when that happens. What that means is basically you have a short on your brake sense line somewhere. The wires are shorted somewhere, because that's all these switches are doing when you pull your brake handle, is shorting those two wires to tell the controller that your brake sense, or that your brake handles are on and you're applying the brakes. I have done another video on the brake sense line and troubleshooting and those switches and everything. I'll put that link down in the bottom of the comments there. So if you're having this problem, it'll give you a better idea of how to troubleshoot it and what's going on with the brake sense line and how that works. Hey, what's up everyone? This video is going to be on the different warning symbols you might get on the display in the Q-Power for these 35 amp controllers with this display, the all dark display. It lights up green. So there's four possible warning symbols, so to speak, that I know of. There's an exclamation mark that will appear up here in this corner. On the opposite side there's a little, it's like a little drawing of a three-dimensional box. On the side on the bottom there, it looks like an axle or something with, you know, like rotation lines going around it. And on this side there's the letter M, like for motor, inside of a circle with like some parentheses on each side. So those are the four warning signs that I know of. If you get any of these warning symbols on your display, certainly it's not a good thing. There's this off chance that it could be a wiring connection, and I'll show you that here in a second. First of all, I've got it hooked up. I've got my lights and stuff disconnected, but I got the motors hooked up. The switches here are hooked up. My power is hooked up to it. So, and my Hall effect lines from each the front and back, and my phase wire lines from each the front and back. So I can run the scooter right now. Everything's hooked up, other than the lights. And you can see there's no alarm indicators in the top left or right corners there. Everything looks normal, so I should just be able to pull the throttle and make my rear wheel spin. I'm in rear drive mode only. Okay, so it's working, it's normal. I could ride this thing around right now if I want. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off now. And we're going to cause some alarms happen, and I'll show you, which alarm happens and why it's happening. So first one is, let's look at the Hall effect connectors that go from the motors to the controllers. And we have, here's the one I have for my front controller. The connector coming out of the controller goes to the connector going to the motor. And here's the one for my rear controller over here. I'm going to disconnect this Hall connector going to the rear controller. I'm going to leave the front one connected, just disconnect the rear one. Okay, so I've got that disconnected now. Now let's power up the display and see what it shows. And you can see I'm getting the M in the lower right side of the screen there. M in a circle with like some parentheses or something on the side. So that's what happens when your rear hall connector isn't connected properly. I don't know if it would be, if one of the wires came off, it'd do that, or which particular one, but that's an indication of something going on with the rear controller hall connections. If it's not a bad connection, then it's probably your controller itself. Now, if I replace that plug and then unplug the front one, and you can see the warning symbol's gone. The M with the circle in it is no longer there. So what that means is this is only monitoring that connection on the rear controller. So if you should see that M in the circle in the bottom right, at the top corner there, the display, it means it's a problem with the connection to your rear motor hall wire. It might not be a connection though, it could be just a bad controller too. But that's what that one indicates. I also tried, I'm not going to do it again, but I had tried disconnecting all the motor phase wires, both the front and back, completely disconnected from the controller to the motor, and that didn't cause any alarm indication in the display. So that's not covered in any of those display items. If you get one of those items, it's not related to these. This isn't causing it. But again, it could be the rear. If you're getting the M in the circle, look at your connection right here in this plug for the rear controller. Okay, so I've plugged my front back on, so I have both my front and back hall connectors connected again. And again, I don't have any warnings in the display. So next I want to move on to the connection for the display itself. Okay, so here's where the display cable plugs onto the rear controller right here. This end is the cable coming from my handlebars, and the other side goes to the controller. So let's look at the wires of this real quick. Notice we have yellow to yellow, blue to blue, green to green, black to black, and then on the end we have a white and then a red on the end, where on this side we have two orange. The only thing, make sure all these colors match up, you know, the yellow, green, blue, and black, and then make sure the white one crosses over to this sun here and goes directly into controller, where the red one crosses through and goes to an orange wire that goes, it goes back, you can't really see it well right here, but it goes to the connector on the cable where you plug your alarm on, or your key switch mechanism plugs onto that point. So that's where this wire is going to. So again, yellow to yellow, blue to blue, green to green, black to black, white to the orange wire that goes directly back to the controller, and red to the orange wire that runs over to that connector where you plug on your alarm module or your key switch. Okay, so let's take a look at these wires on here. First, let's look at the three on the right hand side, the black, the white, and then the red. First of all, the black wire coming from your display basically is coming from your controller on this side to the black. So the black wire there is going directly back to the controller, and that's basically your negative voltage, your negative battery terminal, so to speak. So that passes through to the black wire and then goes up to your controller. So that's a negative input to the display. Next, let's jump over to the red wire. That passes through to an orange wire on this side that goes back to that connector where your alarm module plugs on or your key ignition plugs on. So what's happening here is when you disarm your alarm module or you turn your key to the on position, that puts the positive battery voltage down this orange line, passes through to the red wire here, which goes up to your display throttle switch, the push button on your display. And it sits there until you turn on that switch, push the push button and turn on the display. Then the power passes through the display, your display comes on, and that same battery voltage comes down the white wire, back down this connector, through to this orange wire that goes directly into the controller, and that turns on the controller and the rest of the scooter. So that's how that works. Again, we have our negative battery voltage coming through on the black wire from the controller up to the display on the black wire. We have our switched power either from your alarm module or from your key ignition coming up this wire to the red wire, passing up to the display, and it's going to stay there until you push that push button and turn on the display. Then the power will pass back down the white wire through this other orange wire back down directly into the controller, where it turns on the controller, tells it you've now turned on the push button on the display. So that's those 3 wires. So basically knowing that, if you can turn your display on at all, if it turns on at all and you can see power, it powers up, then you know that the black wire and the red wire are intact. Because if either one of those connections weren't good, if the power wasn't coming from your ignition, it'd be just like you don't have your ignition switch or your alarm turned off. You wouldn't get power to the display. So if you're getting power to the display, everything's good with the black and red wires. Okay, next, let's see what happens if you turn on your display and this power going back down on the white wire going into the orange wire, which then goes in the controller. Let's say if that weren't there, what would we get? So I'm going to basically disconnect this briefly. I'm going to remove the white pin and wire from this connector and then plug it back on and we'll see what we get. So if you're not familiar with removing these pins from the plastic connectors like this, for example, we want to take this white wire out, and I'm just using a tool, something like a poker, anything that's small enough will work. It just has to be able to fit down into the hole in this connector. You can see I have this one. There's bigger holes on the right side. That's not what you're looking for. It's the smaller holes on this left side. As you can see, I have the poker going down into the second hole from the bottom, which is the white wire. And once you push that in there, there's a little tab on the pin that's keeping it locked in place. So basically you kind of pry on the tab this way. Once you got the poker in, you just kind of pry up. I can't do it with 2 hands, but you get the idea, something like this way. That tab, eventually you can push that tab down enough where you can just slide the whole pin and wire out of the back of the connector here, like that. So it slides out the back. Now I basically just taken that whole wire and disconnected it from the harness. That little tab is right there. You can see I've pushed it down so it's pretty much level. Now when you go to put these pins back in, you got to pry that tab up a little bit so it's sticking up, so it's not just flush with it. And then when you push it in, it'll be like a spring lock. Once you get it into the hole, it'll keep it from pulling back out. Okay, so let's see what happens. We'll hook this up again, turn on the display without the white wire connected. And again, the white wire is the power coming back down into the controller after you turn on the display. You can see in the upper right corner there, we're getting a 3-dimensional box that's just flashing. Specifically, I don't know what it means, but I think of it now as that's your controller. It's a picture of your controller, a little 3-dimensional rectangular box flashing. So that's a controller warning. In this case, what the problem is I have simply removed the white wire from that display cable, so it's not. That's one of the interactions with controllers, telling you, hey, something's wrong with the controller. So, could be this connection. Again, check these connections on your display cable thoroughly. Look at the pins, make sure they're all pushed in good and locked in place and not backing out when you push the other connector on them. So that would be about all you could do. If that connection's good, then you probably have bad controllers. Okay, so I'm going to put the white pin back in, and then I'm going to move on and remove the green wire from the connector. You can see before I put this white pin back in, I've bent that little tab on top there, bent it back up, so when I put it into that plastic housing and push it in far enough, it will lock into place then. So you got to make sure you bend that back up a little bit to put the wire back in. Okay, I've now removed the green wire from the plug and put the white wire back in, press it in all the way so it'll be even with the other pins, and then pull back on the wire, hold the plastic piece and pull on the wire just to make sure it's locked in there and doesn't pull out again. Okay, so I got the green one disconnected. Let's plug this back on, turn on the display, see what we get. Okay, so you can see now with the green wire disconnected, just the green wire, we get this indication on the left over here. And actually, I guess maybe it's like, looks like a throttle, a twist throttle or something. So that's one of your throttle wires going down into the controller, the green wire, and again disconnected, you'll get this alarm. Okay, so now I've put the green wire back in, so all the wires are back in, except the blue. I've removed the blue now. Okay, so with the blue wire disconnected, we're not getting any alarm signals whatsoever, so it doesn't really seem to be monitoring the blue wire at all. Okay, so now I got the blue wire back in, and I have pulled out the yellow wire. And with the yellow wire disconnected, we again get that little three-dimensional box up in the corner there in the right flashing. The next thing I decided to do was disconnect all the wires except the power wires going up to the display, the red and black. So here's my display cable. You can see I got the white, yellow, green, blue all disconnected from the connector. I've only got my power going there, the black and the red wires. So at this point, I've got power there. I should be able to power up the display and then see what mine looks like, because I know mine is good. See what alarms it gives. And now you can see I've got mine powered up with just the power, the red and black going up to the display. I'm getting the three-dimensional flashing box, which is the controller. I believe that just means controller issue. Okay, so just to recap on what we just saw there. Basically, again, if you just have your red and black wire, red is the positive voltage coming in after your key ignition or your alarm. The black is the common, the negative. If you can power up your display, then the red and black wires, your power going up there is fine. If your display is showing you the three-dimensional flashing box in the upper right, it could be your controllers still be bad, but also it could be a bad connection on this white wire going into this connector, going across to the orange, going down to the controller, or the yellow wire. Both of those cause that flashing three-dimensional box up in the corner. So yellow disconnected or white disconnected will cause that flashing box. If you get that flashing box, there's a hope that maybe you've got a bad connection here on the white wire or the yellow wire crossing this connector. So check that out. If you check that out and it's good, and all your connections are good, then the controller's bad, unfortunately. Okay, with the blue wire disconnected, caused absolutely no indication on display, so don't really know much about that one. The green wire disconnected is your throttle. It seems to be you get that indication lower left corner. It looks like a twist throttle indication on it, and that would be either you've got a bad connection here for the green wire, or again your controller is bad. You can never rule out a bad controller, so all you can do is check your connections, and if you had absolutely any question about it, you could even hardwire them if you want. Just bypass this connector, cut the wires yellow, and just line them up like that. But I don't think you need to do that. All you really need to do is take the connector apart, look at your pins, make sure they're all straight and even, pull on the wires, make sure that they don't come out of this black housing piece. They should be locked in there with those little tabs. Double check and make sure that your colors all match what I've got on mine. So that's about it for this one, guys. Any of those indications is not, it's a bad thing. You've got a problem, and if it's the twist throttle one alarm, or if it's the flashing 3D box alarm, it could be the connections on those wires, the white and yellow for the box and the green for the throttle indication. Also, if you have the M with the circle in it and kind of like the parentheses around in the bottom right, as we saw earlier in the video, that could be that your rear controller Hall connection is not good between one or all, or if this were unplugged, you would get that indication. So those are things you can check for. Outside of that, if you check all your connections for whatever particular alarm you're getting, and it's good, everything looks good, then unfortunately you have a bad controller set. All right, guys, hope that helps somebody out there at least figure out somewhat what's going on with the scooter. Be able to at least check some wiring before you pay $250 for a new controller set from Qiewa. Qiewa does sell these on their website. The controller sets along with a display for $250. Not cheap by any means. All right, guys, that's it with this one. Till next time.